to do another history movie review this evening. This one was another follow-on I did on a weekend. Did like a massive history movie binge, and this one I'm going to have a little look at would be 1492 and the Conquest of Paradise. So this film, for the history buffs with you, probably understand this is 1492 is about Christopher Columbus, and the Conquest of Paradise. This is directed by Ridley Scott, and this film was there's a couple of times this happened in the 90s where there were competing movies coming out on the same year, and this movie came out. This was the bigger budget, more stars attached to this one, but there was another one that came out with Marlon Brando randomly, and it was all to commemorate the 500th anniversary of Columbus setting foot in the New World in 1992. This movie was around 2.5 hours long, but it did actually, I will be honest, it did actually feel a little bit longer. The film is broken up into different sections, I find, as well, but the main star of the film is Gerard Depardieu, and he at the time was, still is, I suppose, a massive actor, big star, and he had come off, I think he won a Golden Globe and been nominated for an Oscar for Bergerac, so he was pretty much in his pomp when this film came out. I thought it was a really good cast, actually. You got Sigourney Weaver there playing Queen Isabella. You got Michael Wincott, I thought was really good, playing Columbus's arch enemy, Moxica, halfway through the film. But then the other one, really underrated actor, I think, is Armand Desante. He played the rival to Columbus, but was also more like the sort of Secretary of State for the Spanish crown at that time as well. It was a really good film. I think that it didn't do too well at the box office. No, it didn't. Look at that. So the budget was 47 million. That doesn't seem an awful lot for back in the early 90s, but it did seem as if the production was a lot more. 47 million budget, made 59 million. I think it was always going to be a real nerve-touching topic. I think back in the 90s there was more of an atmosphere to sort of commemorate Columbus, more so than it is now, particularly with the sort of political and social culture that we have, where a lot of the sort of controversial figures in the past are being re-examined, questioned, and even demonized for whatever good that's going to do us now. I mean, the facts have been the facts for 500 years when it comes to Columbus, and I think that the film is a very generous retelling of those 4 voyages. I thought that the acting was really good. Gerard Depardieu was pretty good as Columbus, a little bit more of an adventurer than the navigator that we sort of know him to be. A couple of the really interesting scenes in the film that I really enjoy, and I always, if I ever become a history teacher, I'd love to show, would be the contact scene when they first land. I think it's in the Bahamas on the first voyage, and they come across the Taino people there, and that first contact is just, if you could have paid anything, it would have been priceless to have been there. Back in 1492, to first see the New World from a European point of view, and also these strange people from the Americans' point of view. I thought that was a fantastic scene, but also when they do start to build the settlement in the New World, that's a really good scene as well. But I think we know the byproducts of all that building and the so-called culture was really, and I think that what the film does is it does do, say, a disservice. I don't think it depends if you think it's a disservice to the character or the person of Columbus. And yes, if you're looking for everything to be put into the movie, when you're looking for every accuracy to be put in the movie, you're going to be disappointed. I think this movie serves more of a sort of a cavalier, adventurous retelling of the first contact into the New World rather than a full dissected re-examining of the impact of Europeans on the Americans. Because certainly they're leaving out, for the most part of the film, they're leaving out the enslavement of the natives, although it is alluded to for a couple of scenes where you do get forced work in the mines looking for gold on the islands. You do get talks of importing African slaves from the transatlantic slave trade. There is obviously parts in the film with Moxica where there are women are pretty much on hand whenever they want to take women and men or children as well. There's brutality as well, where they do have some climactic fights in the movie. And the other thing, the one thing I think was neglected was there was nothing to do with any sort of pestilence, any disease, because when you sort of re-examine the history of it, the majority of they've shown that the majority of the deaths caused on the inhabitants of the New World was not actually by guns and steel, but rather by germs, and the lack of protection from old world diseases and the exposure. But I suppose it works the other way too, which was the lack of exposure to New World diseases as well. I mean, that went on for hundreds of years after, with different groups colonising parts of the New World, such as the English, French, Portuguese, and the Dutch. Who it was quite often the people would die out after even 18 months to 24 months living on certain islands like the Caribbean, or dying of malaria. But anyway, sorry, I digress with that one. I think overall, with this movie, the critics were mixed. I think for those reasons. It is a really beautiful movie to watch. I think deliberately Ridley Scott made the old world. It's a very dark. The cinematography is very bleak, very dark. Lots of shadows. Lots of. Whereas the New World is shown as open, enlightened, natural. It's a massive contrast and dichotomy between the two. But yeah, you're just watching some of those scenes and thinking, God, I would have given anything to have, been in the court in 1493 or whenever it was when he came home, brought home, all the spices and tobacco and indigenous people. But it's one of those things you wish you could go back and see. But I think this film is as close as you're ever going to get to see it. I thought the people who played the person who played the native Utapam was really, really good in the movie as well. But I think for one of the, in terms of the setup of what was going on at the time, I thought it did a really, really good job showing the fall of Cordoba and the fall of Granada, I should say, sorry, to Castile and Leon. I thought it showed the old world's sense of, particularly Spain, being gripped by theology, by the church and the Inquisition at the time as well. So that was very, very interesting to see people wearing the San Benito on their heads, seeing people actually being, killed by the Inquisition. I think the other good dramatization of the Inquisition I've ever seen is the Assassin's Creed movie, which was pretty good, but in this movie it's pretty brutal. But there are a lot of sort of messages in the film, particularly around leaving the old world, leaving superstition, going somewhere new, going to find this sort of Eden on earth. And it is alluded to in the movie that even within a short space of time, that sort of Eden was transformed into a bit of a hell on earth, particularly for the natives, because the abundance of gold on the islands wasn't as much as what was alluded to originally. And I think that even in the film they allude to his legacy, that the Spanish crown as he fell out of favour in his later years, Columbus, and they tried to destroy his legacy. But fortunately, we do know what actually occurred and what happened. So a couple of book recommendations. I think one of them, you just go straight to the horse's mouth, really. Just go straight to the actual first and second hand accounts, which is the 4 voyages of Christopher Columbus and his own dispatches and his own letters and logbook of the journeys in these 4 voyages across to the New World. The other one I've got, which is a really good book actually, which is Christopher Columbus and the Conquest of Paradise by Kirkpatrick Sale. That's actually not too bad for the price, $7.20 for that paperback. And for the Christopher Columbus book, this is a Penguins classic. Kindle would be £4. Paperback, you're looking at about £10, but surely you can find it cheaper than that somewhere. So, looking at the movie, so it didn't really gross that too much money, $59 million after it came out on a budget of $47 million. The music was really, really good in that. Vangelis, who did the score for, I think it was Chariots of Fire. I'm sure that's what the famous. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. In Chariots of Fire, they did the score for, and in this one, it's fantastic. The opening theme with the haunting sort of native singing is very, very. It's very chilling, but it's also the drum beat of the Spanish soldiers is really it does mesh well together, and it does build up into the movie really, really well. There aren't too many sort of dramatic uptakes in the film. I think the one sort of flashpoint of the movie is where you get a sort of a bit of a rebellion in the New World by one of the nobles, which is Moxica, played by Michael Wincott in the movie, and I think it does show in the movie, and it foreshadows later on with the Spanish when they did colonize and conquer the South America, was the pivotal role that natives on both sides played, so that they were able to bolster their armies with native warriors in order to, and pretty much, might is right, might, and whoever was the mightiest won out in the end, which was Columbus. But I think that he was in the movie. It does show that he is reprimanded when he actually does get back to Spain for what happened when he gets home. But yeah, I mean, I thought overall the acting was pretty good. Sigourney Weaver isn't in it too much, but she was really, really good. Gerard Depardieu was he's fantastic. I could watch him all day. He's apart from the obvious French accent, I thought he was pretty good in the movie, to be honest with you. But I think this movie is one of those. It's one of those types of topics which is absolutely pivotal to our understanding of history. But because it's not popular, because these people, such as Columbus, are not popular, they are very flawed. I say flawed is very, actually I'm being quite generous. A lot of people would say evil. People do evil things, absolutely. People do real evil things, and some of the worst things have been done in the name of doing something for the common good. And I think the byproducts of going to the New World, you're talking about the expansion of the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. You're talking about a massive, you could even call it a cultural genocide, as it was later on in centuries after. I don't think, though, that we should be discouraged, and I hope that filmmakers, TV producers, and writers are not discouraged from focusing on flawed people, because I think that although you're never going to please everybody. I mean, you could make a Columbus movie about a frothy mouth evil colonizer going to the islands, raping and pillaging left, right, and centre, and that would have pleased some people. You could have the opposite, which this film actually tends towards, which it shows a heroic man in the age of superstition breaking boundaries and going across the ocean to find, a new paradise and a new Eden, and I think this definitely tends that way a little bit more. But I think you can find a happy medium, and I would say I think that if you had to do a new Columbus movie, or particularly a TV series, I would probably say a TV series would lend itself more justice. I mean, there's a lot of TV series at the moment where, because some of the characters are less ambiguously good or evil, or they're less flawed, you tend to see repeats of the same types of series. Like you've got some of them are brilliant, but you've got 3 or 4 different Viking series going on at the moment, 2 or 3 different pirate series. There was 2 or 3 different Borgia series, Marco Polo. And yet there's certain characters and certain topics that people are just not prepared to look at. I mean, this I'm glad, and I think that really, although this film may not be perfect, I think it's one of those films where, as somebody who loves history, people ought to be grateful that it's been made. It doesn't matter how poor maybe some representations of it is and what they didn't include, but the fact that people had the actual balls to make the film, knowing that they were going to get backlash no matter what. I think that ought to be commended. They should make more, and hopefully, if they do make more, you'll have a bit more sort of diverse takes on these characters. I mean, I would rather see 2 different takes on Columbus than 4 different reboots of Spider-Man and Batman, and I'm, quite frankly, so I think that's enough of my tangent for that. So, right, just to wrap up, I think that this is a pretty good film. I did think that rating overall, I would give it 3.5 stars for solely just enjoyment and the fact that it's made, and that is pretty much one of the only representations that we've got of Columbus, barring the awful other film that came out at the same time as well. Lots to improve on, of course, but I'm not going to scream and shout about what isn't in the film. I think the best thing to do is just judge the film solely on what is in it, and hope that since 1992, which is 30 years ago, that they do decide to make another series or another movie where we would get a bit more of a balanced view and don't shy away from the negativities, as well as trying to play up the positivities that certainly this film does, because this man and the voyage that he set on was absolutely pivotal in world history, and I think there's probably less than a dozen people and a dozen events where you could say the history of the world turned on a dime, and this was certainly one of those times. And I hope you enjoyed. I would recommend looking at the film and trying to see if you can get that on DVD and Blu-ray. Again, look at that. The price: DVD £23.41, Blu-ray £20. I think with some of these prices on Amazon, I would probably recommend just to see if you can find this on a streaming service. I'm sure I've seen this on Amazon Prime, but look, watch it. Let me know what you think. If you like it, brilliant. If you don't, you'll always find something else better to watch anyway. So, if you do like the video, if you can subscribe if you like the content, and leave a comment. Certainly, it doesn't matter what type of comment it is. Leave a comment.